Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. I'm sounding rough. I sound like you now.
I feel so bad. I know.
So it's probably going to be a shorter episode because I don't have much of a voice. I have like seasonal allergy garbage going on. It is actually snowing. We have 2 or 3 inches of snow on the ground right now.
Well, I have news for you. Shanksville, out my way, we got 6 inches. I measured as I was shoveling.
It's the end of April. Of course, we have 6 inches of snow.
Yes.
So anyway, thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible.
Yes.
We love and appreciate you guys, and we just love the support we get from our patrons.
We sure do. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts, sincerely.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes.
So today we're going to talk about what churches do to set abusers up for failure. Now, I know right off the top of your head, people are thinking, well, abusers set themselves up for failure. Well, I mean, that's true. And they make their own choices. Abusers do what they do because they want to do it. Nobody forces abusers to abuse kids. All the excuses that they have, you don't know how hard my life is. Well, guess what?
Everybody has something hard in their life.
Our life is hard. Your life is hard.
Yes.
That doesn't make you want to go out and abuse people, innocent people.
Right.
So all the excuses are total garbage. With that said, there are ways that churches empower and enable abusers. And so we were talking about this a little bit before. What is it? In my mind anyway, I'll ask you, but in my mind, there are 2 different classifications of people that I've seen that just go absolutely off the charts, like no holds bar, out of control. 2 types of parenting. And it's not just parenting, it's enablers all around them. But there are 2 different classifications, I guess, of people who, when you see them, my wife and I actually do this sometimes. Like, we'll point at kids and be like, they're going to wind up in jail one day. You can just tell.
No, yeah.
You can tell.
They have no regard for respect, no regard for boundaries.
No remorse, no boundaries. Yeah, no boundaries, no...
They will trample over anyone to get what they want. There's entitlement, that feeling of constant entitlement that I deserve this, it's mine, and I'm going to take it no matter what. Yeah. That whole attitude. And you know where that person is going. You just know. So I will say this, with a little bit of a caveat, I guess, is that some kids, regardless of good parenting, have something wrong inside of their brain where they just they can have the best parenting in the world, and they're going to turn out to be abusers. And researchers talk about this a lot. They don't understand what it is with the wiring in the brain, what causes that, why some people are born prone to become abusers and just wind up in prison or whatever. It's not saying that they're born an abuser, but there are certain tendencies in the way they think.
Just the way the brain is wired. And I'm not going to get into the neuroscience because I just don't understand it. And I could spend my lifetime studying it and still
and that's not an excuse, by the way, because the Bible actually talks about that. There is a moral gauge that we are all born with. We all know that it's wrong to kill.
Even if you don't feel that it's wrong,
exactly.
You know that it's wrong.
But God's instilled that, I believe. We're told in us. We know it's wrong to steal. We know it's wrong to take something of someone's, and we know it's wrong to harm someone.
Yes.
We just know that.
Yes. So, talking about not not the wiring of the brain, not that part of it, but the social aspect of it. What we learned behaviors, parenting, things like that. The way that we establish boundaries as children. What are the types of parenting, from your perspective, that enable children to become entitled and just out of control?
Having served on the school board, I'll resort back to that for a while. There were parents that when a child was caught doing something terribly wrong, that parent would come before the school board and scream at us. I mean, get vicious with us, that if you don't back off of my child, I will seek an attorney. I will sue you. I will make life miserable for you. I will call the media in here. It is wrong to punish my child. There's that type of person.
Yes.
Their child can do no harm to anyone. Their child does not ever deserve discipline.
Never consequences. Never consequences.
Never.
Always somebody to advocate for the
yes.
bully,
Yes.
not for the victim.
No. And
Those parents aren't saying, let me side with the people who my child bullied.
No.
They're saying, how dare you?
How dare you think that my child did wrong?
That's
child,
right.
Yeah. Your child did such and such. Oh, I saw that multiple times.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
So in my mind, that's, and I know this is an oversimplification, but there's that side of it where it's the parent who excuses away everything
Right.
and always advocates for their own child. If their child gets in trouble, the parent will be there at the school first thing in the morning to light into to the superintendent or the principal or whoever. I gave this example on a podcast before, but I used to drive school bus, and I had a kid who, this girl was an absolute monster. She was awful in every sense of the word. Little elementary kid. She was like 3rd or 4th grade. And the one time we were going down a main highway, and she puts her arms across the backs of the seat and starts doing flips.
Oh,
Well, I couldn't pull over because there's traffic all around, and it wasn't safe to do so. And I gave her multiple warnings, and the only thing we could do to kids was write them up, which was a joke. And so I told her I was going to write her up, and she had been written up so many times that would have been an expulsion from the bus. And I'll never forget. She puts her hands on her hips as I'm driving down the road, looks at me in the mirror, and she goes, "Go ahead. I hope you do." She's like, "Mama will take care of it."
Oh, boy.
Well, I wrote her up.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I followed up with the school.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, it was the very next day I called the school, and I told them what happened. And I said, you guys, I pulled the tape.
Wow.
We had cameras on the bus.
Right.
I handed the tape in, and I said, look, I wrote this girl up. You guys go back and watch the tape.
Wow.
And so I called the school to follow up. And sure enough, Mama came in just like she said.
Some people know when they raise enough cane.
And the very next day, this little girl's on my bus. She didn't get expelled, which means that, or a suspension, which means that my write-up went in the trash. She gets on my bus in the morning. She looks at me, doesn't say a word, and goes, she sticks her tongue out at me.
Yeah, nice.
I was like, you little devil.
Nice. Yeah.
So
then how do you ever get any type of respect or proper behavior?
You never will. You never
out
will.
of that child. And
never will you get respect out of that child.
No. It was totally lost at that point. Totally done in. Because Mama took care of it.
Unless there's a really hard life lesson down the road, somebody like that will never learn to set boundaries, will never learn to respect people, and will always feel entitled.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
That whole thing. Right.
And so there's that side of it. And then I saw another perspective where I saw kids that were so sheltered and suffocated, I guess, is the best description I can.
They have the hovering parent The hover.
everything they
Yeah.
did was wrong. It was, it was, everything was wrong. It was guarded. It was, parents were by their side, didn't trust them to walk 3 steps
Right.
without mama being by their side or dad being by their side. And they were told that the world out there it's full of evil people and it's broken and people are bad. And so they were so sheltered that I saw some of these kids come to college, or the Christian college that I went to. They got a taste of freedom and went off the reservation.
They go hog wild crazy.
Not all of them,
Taste it, no, but a lot do.
but some of them do.
Taste it. I can't say. A friend in college, she came from a home like that. She was a super person, but I gotta tell you, her first 2 years of college were woo. She experienced life because she had never been allowed to taste
That's right.
anything.
That's
ever,
right.
Or to make her own decisions. We have to teach
Exactly
kids to
right.
make decisions.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes.
And to bear the responsibility of saying, okay, I'm responsible for the consequence of this decision.
And I think I'm glad you said that, because I think part of the poor decision making, going out, I mean, I saw people do the stupidest stuff. By stupid, I don't mean like just immoral. I mean like wildly dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
Wildly
Right.
dangerous. Reckless.
Right.
Putting other people's lives
Right,
at risk. And they were doing those things because they were never taught that these things have consequences, not in the real sense of the word. Like, they were taught consequences, but it was like this false barrier where they were told that everything's bad, everything's evil. And they go out and they learn that that's not true. And so they're like, well, I got to try to, I got to figure this out. And I think part of that's this exploration and curiosity.
It is, Jimmy. It really
And they
is.
just want to find out how life works because they've never
been
experienced
allowed
it.
to. They have never
Right.
been allowed. And let's face it, that's a growth period for all of us. When
Yeah.
we're in homes with our parents, it's kind of like your kids are on a leash at first, but then you lengthen that and lengthen that and lengthen that till you finally let go and
Yeah.
let that child kind of graze the field and figure out they have to make choices for themselves,
Yeah.
decisions, and then bear the consequence of that decision. But if we're always there scooping them up and saying, no, it's going to be okay because I'm here and I'll take care of you, or if we have kept them so tight and then suddenly when they leave home and we cut the apron string, so to speak, we just toss them out into a world that's too big and crazy. They don't know how to live.
Well, what's interesting is with both groups of people, what I saw was that rules meant nothing to them. Well, I shouldn't say that. For the people who always lacked discipline, like the little girl on my bus, just never any boundaries at all. Rules for her meant nothing.
Right.
Rules for those types of people typically mean nothing. And so it's people like my dad who can literally rape children and be like, what do you mean that's a big deal?
Right. I will remember
why,
the words.
why would there be consequences to this?
The
Like, he was
words,
surprised that there were consequences.
Just surprised and like, I don't know what I did that was so wrong.
Yeah.
He was
Even though he knew
He knew.
he knew full well.
Right.
But it's that mentality of, well, nobody ever got down my throat before about this, like nobody got on my case about this before. And I remember him writing me multiple letters from prison, talking about how blog posts that I wrote were treating people like him as second-class citizens in heaven. There are no second-class citizens in heaven.
Right.
And I think he genuinely believes that.
He did, yeah.
What do you mean there are consequences once you've raped dozens, if not hundreds of children? What do you mean that you wouldn't be allowed to go to church when there are little children there? Like, he was genuinely irritated at that and confused.
Yeah, it was a foreign thought for him because he always got away with things. Always.
That's right.
He
So
slid through school and he made it. He slid through college, and he made it. He because he had a certain charisma and he was soft spoken, he could weasel his way into cajoling, you know, getting pampered, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because here's this nice boy, nice young man, clean cut. Well, let's give him a break.
Yeah.
And he knew he could do it.
And he used it. Yeah.
He used it.
So
yeah.
for people like that, rules mean nothing to them.
Right.
And so they'll always find ways to slither around them. Like, I wrote in my book, the chapter about being wise as serpents and innocent as doves.
Yep.
Like serpents, they kind of bob their head along, with the snake charmer. And then when the snake charmer thinks that they have the snake under control, that's when they
Goes
strike.
in for the bite. Yep. Yeah.
And so that's how people like him maneuver. People on the other end of the spectrum, rules mean everything to them, and they hate the rules. They loathe rules.
Right.
And so they also find ways around the rules. And in fact, the more rules and the more boundaries you put in place, the more they're like, I'm gonna openly defy these rules.
Yeah.
And screw you, I'm going to do what I want.
You got it. That attitude. And
where the other ones are more quiet and sneaky and manipulative
about
it.
Do that because he grew up in a rather stern home.
He did, and what's interesting is he had, in my opinion, he had both worlds.
Right.
Where he had
Yep. Yes.
This oppressive, by his own description to me, this oppressive home.
Right.
Where, like, he wasn't allowed to wear shorts in the home.
No.
Because they were too revealing.
Grass, he wasn't allowed to wear shorts in the heat of the summer.
But yet mommy and daddy were always there to defend him.
Yes.
Always. And still,
still today.
he gets that support from his side of the family. And, I'm not going to give examples because, it's not about that.
I think we get it. We get what you're saying, but that becomes then an enabling thing for the abuser.
Yes.
That just enables that behavior over and over and over again. When there is no consequence, why would that person not rape the child?
That's right.
Why would that person not harm the child? Why would that person even care that it hurts someone? They don't.
That's right.
They don't. It's all about me.
So,
it's all about me.
How does this translate to churches? Well, I think that churches in many, many ways have both of those worlds existing at the same time too. It's that absolute, I would defend this person to the bitter end in the name of Jesus.
Right.
And they're the first one standing there to defend this person. They're the first people in the courtroom to show their support to the abuser, not the victim,
right. No.
for the abuser. They're the ones who tell the victim, by God, you need to forgive, and why would you even bring this up?
Right. You need to show mercy. You need to forgive. If you don't forgive, you won't be forgiven. I stand by God's word. God's word says, we need to forgive everyone.
Yep.
We are all equal in the kingdom of God, and on and on and on.
So they do that, but they also create this oppressive environment with all these rules and regulation. And I think that people who've not been churched sometimes walk into the world of religion and they're like, what bizarro planet did I just walk into?
Really, it's so confusing
and
for people.
Even the language is different.
It really is. It's very confusing.
People change when they walk inside that church building, and their whole terminology is different. The way they carry themselves physically, the way they dress is different. Everything is different. The rules are different.
It's funny when you're talking about that because as kids, my sisters and I were always told to, you put your church clothes on.
Put your Sunday best on.
Church shoes on, and you act your Sunday best. Always.
Yeah.
It was never, we're just going to go worship God. And it was never that. You always had to put on your church attire, personality, actions, everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And I think we kind of grow up by those rules. And it is very confusing to people because it's a mixed up mess.
Yeah.
It really is.
And those rules are are loathsome to an abuser who
yeah.
doesn't have rules.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so when you have somebody like my dad who he grew up in both of those worlds simultaneously in the same home. This oppressive,
Yeah.
like, rules out the wazoo.
Right.
Yet where he knew that if he got in trouble for anything, mom and dad would be the first by
It
my
was
side.
funny.
That's a wildly dangerous person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When somebody's an abuser, that is
talking
a
about
wildly
that,
dangerous
yes.
person.
And that's what happened. Yeah, I experienced that, and I never really put it into that mindset, Jimmy, until quite a while ago. But yeah, he was a rule breaker, but he always had the backup of his parents.
Yeah. Yes.
He was a big rule breaker, man, oh day,
Yeah.
because he had so many rules growing up.
Yeah.
He couldn't go to the prom. He couldn't wear shorts. He had to have a certain
Mixed
haircut.
swimming, on and on and on.
Oh,
You can't
no,
swim
yeah,
boys and girls
yeah,
at the same
no.
time.
In
On and
college,
on and on and on
he
and
had
on.
to call home to get his dad's permission to get his hair cut a little bit different. And it was like the most bizarre thing
Yeah.
for me. I said, "You're calling your dad? You're 19, almost 20 years old." Yeah, I have to. It's like,
Yeah.
it's weird. But yet, he broke so many other rules that I won't go into.
Oh, I
and
know.
it's
For
like,
his whole life, he
whoa.
broke rules.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that's what I mean. That's that social side of it. And I think churches have no clue, or they don't care, or both. They don't know or they don't care just how much they empower abusers when they stand there and support abusers. And keep in mind, I picture this little girl. I
Yeah,
will
that's
never forget
right,
her face
right.
ever for the rest of my life. I can see her face right now, and that's been, oh man, that's been 17, 18 years ago.
Right.
I can still see her blonde hair,
Well,
her
she
blue eyes.
won. I mean,
I can see her
she
face, and I can
let
see her
you
tongue
know,
come out
yeah.
at me. That morning that she got on the bus, and she goes, sticks her tongue out at me, and she keeps walking. And I can still picture that. And imagine what it's like for victims of these abusers. When churches stand there and they support them to the bitter end, they will die on that
Right,
hill
right.
defending the abuser, not the victim. They will die on the
Yep,
hill
yep.
defending that abuser to the bitter end.
Because they're going to forgive them and extend
And that
God's
abuser,
mercy.
that's
and,
right.
Yeah.
And that abuser will turn and they'll look at their victims, metaphorically or literally. They'll look at their victims and stick their tongue out
Yep,
and keep
say,
walking.
I did it.
It's a big
I gotcha.
F
Yeah.
you
Yeah, it is.
to
It
the
is.
victims.
Yeah, it is.
And this is what we do in the churches. So I mean, I've said this until I'm blue and green in the face to churches about just how important it is to separate a known abuser
Right.
from
Oh, yeah.
any potential victim, from victims and potential victims forever.
Exactly, Jimmy.
And they look at me like, I remember the one guy poking me in the
Oh,
chest.
yeah.
Do you call yourself a Christian? And I'm like, no, I don't call myself a Christian. I am a Christian.
They don't get it. They don't want to get it. And it's just a weird mindset when we feel like we have to scoop everybody up and embrace them no matter what, with no consequence for what they've done.
Except the oppressed.
Ex-
Except
yeah.
the person
Now,
who's
the oppressed
crying in the
person,
corner,
right.
who's been bullied or beaten or raped or whatever.
Well, what do we say? What do we say from little up? You be the bigger person and you
Take
forgive.
the high road.
Yeah, you be the bigger person.
Turn the other cheek.
Yep. And it's like, I believe in being the better person, but I also believe...
For certain things.
I always believe
Not
that.
for abuse.
However, there has to be that consequence for what someone has done.
Yes.
There has to be. There
Yes.
has to be.
Yeah.
Or it's all... It erases everything.
Well, I mean, you can see this erosion in some of our major cities where there's complete lawlessness.
I see it all over
Literally,
right now,
I mean,
yeah.
think about this. Like the whole defund the police movement, and I'm not like, this isn't a political statement,
Yeah.
and I don't really fall on one side or the other on the political spectrum. I'm one of those strange people that like I've voted both sides, whatever. But this whole defund the police movement, when I first saw people saying that, I was like, this is going to be total anarchy in the streets. Well, lo and behold,
Right.
you have, what did they call it in Portland? It was Occupy whatever. They burned the police barracks down, like with the police officers in it. They set it on fire. I'm like, you guys set your city's police barracks on fire.
There's such disrespect.
And started
yeah,
riots in the street.
Right.
And the media's calling it peaceful protests. I mean, like, if that's not a crystal clear picture of what happens when you have people radically defending
that's a good analogy.
idiocy.
Yeah. Good analogy there.
That's it.
It's mayhem, total mayhem.
Absolutely.
It's all,
there are no
everything
rules.
goes. Everything goes. You can see a shift, Jimmy, from when you were younger to now. I see a major shift in parenting, in worship, in discipline, in the way we accept or do not accept rules. It's really weird anymore when I see kids. I was in Walmart the other day, and this kid was just ripping and tearing and going absolutely crazy in the aisle next to me. We were both doing checkout, and I wanted to say to that mother, kind of get your kid under control a little bit, whamming things, and
I've seen parents laugh. They think their kids are being cute.
Yeah, and there was no discipline, nothing, and I think that is horrible.
Yeah.
That child thinks, and I don't know, I didn't stay long enough. I wanted to get away from them because the noise and the confusion was horrible.
Yeah.
But that kid wanted a certain toy, and the mother, quietly said, no, not today. And that kid was just picking up and throwing, and I'm thinking, I don't think so.
How about the reward for that kind of behavior?
Right.
If you stop doing that, I'll get you your toy.
Yeah, and
what?
You're right.
In what sane world
right. And
do you
I don't
reward
think
somebody
so for that behavior?
Right.
Exactly. So, we see these shifts, and it's crazy. No wonder we have in the churches what's going on. No
I know.
wonder.
Yeah. So it's this.
Now, we used to have, remember, back at fire and brimstone.
Yeah, which also
Was terrible.
ironically
I grew up.
created abuse.
It did. I grew up in that setting, and now it's pretty much anything goes.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah,
kids-
both ends of that spectrum
Yeah,
are not healthy.
right,
And the
right.
happy medium, I think, is one, you set boundaries for known abusers and just say, sorry, bud, like, you're not welcome here.
Respect and obey those, those boundaries. Those boundaries are there for a reason.
Yeah.
For a reason.
Yeah, it's just, it's gotten so out of hand. Well, I don't know if it's gotten out of hand. I think it's always been. Abuse has been around since the beginning of time, but the church isn't making it better when we coddle abusers and run to their side and tell victims that, you need to forgive your abuser and, take the high road, turn the other cheek. It's insanity. Insanity when there are no consequences.
When we understand the scope of what abuse does to a child, to a person, and we're saying you take the high road and you forgive, we're not getting it. I really feel we're not getting it. We don't get the whole of what God expects us, how he expects us to treat that particular sin, and it is a sin, and it is a criminal act. And it, raping children is a criminal act for a reason.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable at all.
I don't know if you saw this post the other day that Sarah McDougal put about Judas, that she's like, I'm tired of seeing all this stuff about
I did.
I'm
Yeah.
a Judas. That could be me.
Right. I saw that. Yeah.
I've betrayed Jesus, and he still washed Judas's feet. And she's like, no, like,
right.
yeah, it doesn't work that way. And
She did a good job with that.
it was
yeah.
so phenomenal.
Yeah,
And she's
it was
like, we're
great.
not a Judas.
Yeah.
She's like,
Yes.
yeah, Judas betrayed Jesus, but he didn't oppress him. He wasn't a constant thorn in his side. He wasn't belligerent to him. He didn't physically assault him. Jesus wasn't afraid of Judas.
Right.
Jesus didn't live in the same house under Judas's control.
She did a great job of
I thought it was
explaining that.
phenomenal.
She did,
and
yeah.
and it's
She
this
did.
whole, like I said, when we get in the realm of religion, we get so weird. And I've heard people talk about Judas like Judas was so remorseful and so sorry for what he did. And I'm like, Jesus called him the devil.
I don't think you're right. Yeah.
Judas was not remorseful.
And Judas knew what he was doing.
He knew exactly what he was
He
doing.
knew exactly what he was doing. So, yeah.
You know, he did go out. He cried. I think it was this momentary, like, I don't know, kind of, he saw the impact of what he did. But I don't think that Judas was so broken and torn up about it that, you know, I don't know. It's just like I've thought about this story and I've reread it 1,000 times and I'm like, I just don't get that I could be Judas. That could be me. No, it couldn't.
No.
Certain people absolutely can be a Judas, but I'm not one of them. You're not one of them.
I know I could not be a child abuser. I will tell you
That's
that.
Right.
I know I will never rape a child. I know I will never abuse a child.
You'll never murder somebody.
I know I will not do that.
You'll never commit homicide.
I know I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I know my heart.
Right.
I do know. But an abuser, you know, by contrast, knows if I'm around a child, like your dad said, you let me out of prison, I'll go abuse again.
He told me
away.
verbatim in a letter, he said,
go.
if I were to get out of prison tomorrow, I would abuse a child tomorrow.
Right.
He told me that word for word.
I've read book after book after book that did interviews with rapists, and they'll tell you the same thing.
Yep.
You let me out, and I will go do it
But
again.
they won't tell church leaders that.
No. No. They'll
I
say,
found Jesus in prison.
Yeah.
I had all this time to reflect on all the bad that I did. I'm a changed
we fall
man.
for it. We fall. You
know.
know, society falls for it,
Yeah.
or did. Hopefully, you know.
No, they still are.
Still are, but I think there's more awareness.
Some people are
now.
waking up.
There's more awareness.
Definitely
now.
more
a lot
awareness.
more awareness now.
So anyway, I'm going to close on that note and just say, you know, if you're a church whose sympathy lies with a known serial abuser, don't. I don't know how else to say it.
I mean, really.
Don't defend the
Yeah.
indefensible.
Exactly.
You can't do it. You shouldn't do it. And you're only enabling and empowering and hurting that abuser by not setting boundaries for them. There have to be boundaries. There have to be consequences. So we'll leave you with that. My voice is about gone. Thank you for tuning in.
Okay.
And we'll catch you next episode.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.